Guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you are new. My name is Heather. I'm a homeschooling mom of 3 kids, elementary, high school, and recent high school graduate. I keep saying elementary and high school age because I've been saying it so long, and now my oldest is graduated. So today I'm going to be doing a little bit of a reading update. Totally skip May because I did not read all that many books in May. I did still read several books, and I know that probably it's a lot of books to some people, but it's not a lot to me. And I really feel like April and May, I just fell out of my reading rhythm. I did read some books in April, and I think that I did do a reading update for April, but it was very, very small and there wasn't a whole lot there. One of the new things that I have been trying to do over the past couple of months is more commonplacing. And if you don't know what commonplacing is, essentially it is just copying down information from books and media, podcasts, music, all of that kind of stuff. And then I also include my thoughts about those specific things. It's how I've taken notes for a long time, but never really found a term for it. And so I started using my Common Planner, my B5 Common Planner. I ended up purchasing an academic year Common Planner to try out, and I have been using that for commonplacing and really enjoying it quite a bit. I'm hoping to share more about commonplacing next month, hopefully. I'm still kind of getting used to it, and I'm not entirely sure what my system is yet, so I'm sharing little sneak peeks here and there, but not too much. So one of the things about commonplacing for me is that it actually ends up becoming a struggle for me to read because I'm looking for the perfect time to do it. I want to be able to sit down and read my book as well as have my commonplace notebook available so that I can write things down as they come to me when I'm reading, and that is not always going to be able to happen. And in April and May, we were super busy, and so I didn't have a ton of time to do a lot of commonplacing in May. However, I ended up doing more in May than I did in June, and we weren't out of the house nearly as much. I think maybe June was more of like a recovery month for me, but I did start to get my reading mojo back, and so I'm excited to share some of the books with you. So let's get into it. This is a long introduction. Per usual, I'm a chatty person. So the first book that I read was nonfiction, and this was back in May. It's called An Unhurried Life by Alan Fadling, and I gave it 4 stars. I had heard about this book maybe last year and downloaded it on Kindle, and then I just didn't read it, and I did go through it at the beginning of May, and I felt it was what my body was gravitating towards. What my mind needed was something to talk about slowing down, because April and May were just absolutely crazy for me, which if you've seen any of my videos in the month of June, you would have known that I did do a whole 13th week / quarterly reset set of vlogs. I will leave that playlist linked in the description box. It talks a lot about how overwhelmed I felt and how we just had so many things going on. It was just craziness, and yeah, it was a little much. The next book that I read was Sunrise on the Reaping, and I love the Hunger Games trilogy, and I really liked Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. However, I was not a huge fan of Sunrise on the Reaping, and I know a lot of people really loved this book, and I think that the inclusion of characters that we already know from the original trilogy is really good. However, it felt a little bit not lazy to me, but there wasn't as much character development because there was already this assumption that you knew the characters. Well, you did know the characters later on in life, but you didn't really know them then. I just wish that there was a little bit more lead up. It just seemed too convenient to have some of these things pop up. I don't know, maybe she has another book that's going to kind of link everything together. I think that's maybe what I was missing, but I did give it 3.5 stars. It was just okay for me. Jack loved it. Absolutely loved it and didn't know what I was talking about when I was talking about my struggles with it, but really it was not my favorite, and it was the only fiction book that I read in May, and I was kind of disappointed about that. The next book that I read was Building a Second Brain by Tiago Forte, and that was really good. Essentially, it is about creating a digital space to keep track of all of your notes and quotes and pictures and ideas and all of that kind of stuff, calendar information. It was really, really fascinating to me. I'm not a digital planner at all. In fact, I did try to sit down and do some digital planning. I do use Google Cal to drag and drop ideas for content creation, but I just have it on the monthly view. I tried to put it on the weekly view and time block my days on that, and it was so incredibly overwhelming to do that. It just was way too much, which is funny because that's exactly what I do in my daily planner, but it was so overwhelming to me. So I'm not a digital planner person, but because I've been exploring commonplacing, because I do use so much paper, I've been trying to figure out how can I index this information so that it's accessible to me in the future. That's a lot harder to do with paper systems than it is to do with digital systems, obviously. And so I'm trying to figure out if there's a way to have some sort of a hybrid approach. I thought that a lot of his ideas were fascinating as far as how to connect information, and he did take a lot of inspiration, I would say, from David Allen's Getting Things Done, and I just thought it was really interesting. I took a ton of notes in my Commonplace notebook, in my Common Planner, about this, and I've watched a lot of podcasts and videos. I like all of the productivity YouTubers. I find them very entertaining, and none of it is new to me. I've been reading productivity books for decades. I really like that kind of stuff. I mean, really, since I read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People in college. It's really been that long. I've been out of college for a few years. It was really fascinating. I have not explored it to the end to come up with any sort of idea, but it has been really fascinating to read this book and some of the other books that he has mentioned. I do have his Para Method book that I want to read as well. I am unsure if that type of digital system would work for me, but I have been trying to kind of explore Notion. I'm exploring some note-taking apps like Obsidian. I'm thinking about maybe some AI type stuff to help convert my paper notes into digital systems. So we'll see. It's really interesting, and I know a lot of people just don't care about that kind of stuff. It's not the level of detail, and everything that I am looking at is not something that I would say most people do. I think that I'm kind of an outlier in that aspect, but I have notebooks from the past 30 years, journals and notes and book notes and Bible notes and homeschool notes and all of that information. It's very easy, and he, I think, would say to just archive it all, but there is something to create a system going forward. How can I create a system going forward so that even though I know I have all that information and I could weed through it to find certain things, and I do sometimes, I really enjoy going through memory bins and journals and stuff and say, oh, well, what did I think on such and such a date 15 years ago? But having an indexing system for the future so that it's more searchable for me, I think would be helpful. It's given me something to consider for 2026 goals. I know it's only July. Don't come at me. It's not something I'm going to be working on now, but it is something that I've been kind of exploring a lot this year, and I think that it may become a goal that I want to explore more in 2026. So that was building a second brain. That was a lot of thoughts. I gave that 5 stars, and because he had referenced David Allen's Getting Things Done so much, I did go back and reread that. That's still a 5-star read for me. Really, really love his method of getting all of the thoughts out of your head on paper, and he does recommend giving each thought and thing that you need to do or take care of one piece of paper, so you're essentially just getting a stack. I use a lot of note cards for things like this, or you could use sticky notes or whatnot, and then developing a system so that you are going through that information regularly. The hardest part is the initial going through of the information. I did a whole workshop over my membership community last year about how to use a brain dump journal and creating a master to-do list, as well as creating a system to make sure that you're checking in with all of that stuff regularly so you're able to make progress, and your brain actually lets go of those thoughts when you write it down because it knows that you have a system in place to deal with it at a later point. It's not making you hold on to the information. This is really just about reducing mental load and decision fatigue for the future. It's been very helpful for me. I will leave that linked if you're interested in it. So those were the 4 books that I read in May, and there were a ton of books that came out in May that I wanted to read, and I just have not been able to read them because I can't get them at the library and I haven't wanted to spend the money on purchasing them. I will probably end up purchasing some of them. Because they were released in May now, I did actually go through my library system to see what is available now, and I have requested some of these books. I think the problem is, when I see new releases, I want to read them in that month, but unless I'm willing to pay for the book, which I'm not always willing to do, unless it's an author that I know that I absolutely want the book, it makes it a little bit more challenging, but I have been able to request a few. So hopefully those will come sooner rather than later and I can read them this summer. In the month of June, I ended up reading 10 books and I'm really excited about that. 5 of the books were right at the end of the month, like the last few days of the month. I finally had a chance to kind of sit down and just rest over a weekend. We didn't have a ton of stuff going on, and so that's what I did. I have been getting up super early. If you've watched any of my vlogs lately, I don't know, it's summer in Maine. The sun is up at like 4:30. It is light out outside at 4:30. I do not have room darkening shades in my bedroom. I do not wear a mask to bed. I wake up when the light is out, and that is usually around 4:30. So it will get progressively later as we get closer to the fall. But that means that on the weekends, I am up super, super early, hours before my family, and instead of trying to do productive things, which is often what I do, or working on work tasks or being in my membership community or whatnot, I just spent the time reading, and it was glorious, and I finally feel like I'm kind of getting back into the rhythm of being able to read fiction, which is good. So the first few books that I read this month were actually nonfiction. Actually, the first 5 books that I read were nonfiction. The first was Fair Play by Eve Rodsky, and this is a reread for me. I read it a couple of years ago, and when it first came out, I thought that the idea was really good. However, I didn't know how to use her system as a homeschool mom, as somebody who has her own business but is also really involved with the education of her children and taking care of the home and being home. I wasn't sure how to manage that because a lot of her cards of her Fair Play game, which, let me back up for a second. Fair Play is about coming up with a system for your family to take care of all of the things that you need to deal with on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, year-to-year basis to live your life as a family. She has a game that she has created with all of these Fair Play cards where you hold a specific deck of cards, and the cards that you hold, you are responsible for the conception, the planning, and the execution of everything on that card. Well, some of those cards just don't apply to us. A lot of them don't apply to us. Some of them I really needed to think about more, and I felt like I needed to add my own cards to the system because of our lifestyle and how we do things. And I know that's not how you're supposed to do this game specifically, but as a rebel, I change everything. When somebody says you need to do something a certain way, I'm like, well, we could probably tweak it a little bit. And actually, I do believe that for any new system that you're trying out, you really need to have ownership and buy-in. And in order to do that, you have to tweak it to make it reflect you individually and your family individually. So my first time reading through that book, I was like, I don't think this is a good book. The second time, I was able to look at it through a different lens and take what was important that she was saying and let go of some of the other things, and it gave me some new ideas. So I really did like the reread much more than the first time around. I gave it 4 stars. The next book that I read was How to Live on 24 Hours a Day by Arnold Bennett. This was a super short book. I think it was written in the early 1900s. It maybe took an hour to read. It was interesting. I had seen a YouTuber who I cannot remember the name, talking about like her top 5 books or whatnot. But essentially, it is you are the owner of your time, and you can say yes to things that matter and you can say no to things that don't matter, and it is okay to do that. I thought it was an encouraging book, super quick read. Some of the examples obviously were for a different time and do not apply now and should not be taken that seriously. But I think that it had a good message overall. It was encouraging, especially because I was kind of thinking about time management after I read Getting Things Done and Building a Second Brain and then Fair Play. This was just a good next step. The next book that I read was a newer release, and that is called Ordinary Time by Annie B. Jones. And I really liked this book when I started it. I kind of looked at it as a collection of essays. It's about how she is living in a small town and has seen so many people move away. Like, they may start there, but it's not where they live for the long term, and kind of her journey and her faith journey. I really liked the start of the book. I wasn't as much a fan of later parts in the book, but overall it was encouraging, and it gave me some food for thought. And like all books, you take what you want and you leave the rest. You do not have to implement everything from every single book you read. It's not possible to do that. Even some of my 5-star reads, I do not take everything from that book and say, okay, yes, this is what I'm going to do now. But it was good, especially because we do live in a small town. I live where I actually grew up, and we did take a detour to Boston for many years, but it is interesting to kind of think about moving home and living in a small town and what that means, and kind of the different lifestyle and such, and just appreciating it for what it is. So I did like it, but I only gave it 3 stars. I think it was just okay. It started out really great for me, but kind of didn't finish as well. If you are looking for something like that, where it's leaning into living in a place that you maybe didn't expect to be living, I think that it would be good. The next book that I read was Mom Enough by Desiring God, and I thought that this was very good. Again, it was a collection of blog posts, and I actually listened to it as I was walking. I took it out from Hoopla. I was just looking for something encouraging, and I thought that that was really good. I think that it's definitely more for new moms or younger moms, not necessarily moms at my stage of life, but I still did find it encouraging. The next book that I read was The New Menopause by Dr. Mary Claire Haver, and I gave that 5 stars. That was really, really interesting, eye-opening information. I think that if you are in your late 30s, you should read this book. Obviously you need to do your own research and talk to your own doctor, and nothing that she says is a prescription for you as an individual. But I found the information fascinating, and some of the different studies are really interesting to read through, and just all of the information. I found it really, really informative and helpful, so definitely recommend. The next book that I read was Fearless by Lauren Roberts, and this was the last book in the Powerless trilogy, and I did like it. I gave it 4 stars. It was definitely longer than the first 2 books, and I felt like there was a lot of, I don't know what was going on. I knew what was going on, but I was just like not as engaged as I maybe wanted to be. And then like the last third of the book seemed super rushed, and you got a lot more information. And I feel like maybe you could have cut out some of the start of the book, and maybe it could have even, I don't know, the pacing was off for me. But I do like the series overall. Emma is reading Reckless right now, and she loved Powerless, so it's a good YA romantasy. The next book that I read was Silver Elite by Danny Francis, and I gave this 5 stars. I think they call it dystopian romance, and I kind of think yes-ish, but I think it's more romance than dystopian. I think that there is definitely a world that can be explored a lot more. I really liked the book. I was super engaged. It didn't take me long to read. I know that there's some controversy around this, like on Book Talk, but I'm not on TikTok, so I don't really know it. I think that the author is writing under a pen name, but it's been said that it's a well-known author, but the author wanted to write some, like a different, I don't know. So We'll see. It's the first book, I think, in a trilogy, maybe a series. I don't know. And I don't know why I do this to myself. Every time I read a first book in an unfinished series, I'm like, why did I do that? Because I want to know what happens next. It obviously ends on a cliffhanger, but I thought it was great. It was a good book for me. The next book that I read was Sounds Like Love by Ashley Poston. I gave this 4 stars, and I just picked it up at Barnes & Noble. Emma picked it up and I was like, oh, I love this author. And so I bought the book, and it was a super quick read. Really enjoyed it, a fun summer read, and it reminded me how much I loved The 7-Year Slip, because it does have some of the characters mentioned from The 7-Year Slip in Sounds Like Love, so it made me want to read The 7-Year Slip again. So I did do that and gave that 5 stars again. That's a reread. I've read it 3 times. I need to buy a physical copy because I love that book. I think that it should have a trigger warning, and it doesn't. If you are interested in that, please let me know, and you can send me an email and I will let you know what that trigger warning is, because it's something that is talked about a lot in the book. And I just think the first time I read it, I was kind of like, oh, okay. And I wish I had known that going in, but love, love, love that book. And I gave 4 stars to Sounds Like Love. Also really enjoyed that. Super quick read. And then the last book that I read in June was Problematic Summer Romance by Allie Hazelwood. I got that on Kindle and really enjoyed that one as well. I did not read the first book. Like, it's a story about characters that showed up in one of her previous books, but I didn't read that other book, and so it was me coming in not knowing any of these people, but I didn't feel like there was anything wrong with that, and I did give it 4 stars. Really enjoyed it. So I'm happy to kind of be back on the fiction train, and I hope that I can stay for a while, especially during my summer of rest. I'm hoping to do a lot more reading. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this little peek into my reading over the past couple of months. Hopefully I'll have more to share, in August. Hopefully I'll read more books in July, we'll see. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you have questions about anything that I talked about, please leave me a comment, or you can email me. My contact form is always in the description box. If you're looking for more help and encouragement around home and homeschool and goals, I would love for you to come check out my membership community. We're focusing on rest and have a bunch of little mini challenges over the summer. I would love for you to come check us out. That link is always in the description box. Again, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye guys.